Perimenopause has been so demonized that a lot of women expect to feel terrible and assume that it's just part of getting older. So when their cycles shift, their sleep gets worse, their weight changes, or they feel more anxious, inflamed, and exhausted, they're often just told it's hormones and let's just add something. But what if that's not the full story? What if your body has been under so much stress for so long that dysfunction started to feel normal? Today I'm going to talk about what the research actually shows about cycle changes in perimenopause and why for so many women, the bigger issue may not be hormones alone at all. Welcome to Faith Over Pharma, the podcast for women who want a different way to heal. I'm Susan Gladstein, holistic health practitioner and functional nutrition specialist, and here we explore faith-led, holistic approaches to hormones, energy, and symptoms that just keep getting brushed off. If that's you, you're in the right place. If you've been feeling off for a while and you know deep down that the answers you've been given are incomplete, I want to tell you about the Rooted Reset. This is for the woman who has been told her labs are normal, her symptoms are just part of her age, or that the only thing left to do is manage what you're feeling and move on. Inside the Rooted Reset, we step back and look at the full picture. Your symptoms, your cycle, labs, stress patterns, rhythms, and all the things that have probably been dismissed, missed, or addressed in isolation. Because I don't believe that women need more confusion. I believe they need clarity. So if you're tired of partial answers and are ready to understand what your body has actually been trying to communicate, head over to susangladstein.com to learn more about the Rooted Reset. There is just so much fear-based messaging around perimenopause. Women are being taught to just expect their bodies to become chaotic, unpredictable, and basically impossible. So when cycles start changing, when sleep gets worse, we gain weight more easily, we feel more tired, wired, puffy, anxious, or inflamed, kind of just assume that that's what happens now, right? They assume this is perimenopause. And very often, the conversation immediately turns into a hormone conversation. You need hormone replacement. We need to fix your estrogen. You need progesterone. You need something because your hormones are the problem. Now, let me be clear, hormones matter, but in all of my experience, speaking to hundreds of women, looking at labs, it's not always the full story. Because many of the women I work with who are struggling the most are not just dealing with changing hormones. They're dealing with bodies that have been under chronic stress for so long that stress actually feels normal. And that's a huge difference. I mean, they'll tell me, I'm not stressed. And then I'll look at the whole picture and it tells a completely different story. Their sleep's off, their cycles are more erratic, energy has tanked, they're dealing with inflammation, their body is hanging on to weight, resilience is low, and their labs often show patterns that point to long-term stress load. And yet they're functioning because, they're still getting through the day. This has become their baseline, so they don't even recognize how much their body has been carrying. This is kind of what I want to dive into a little bit more today because yes, perimenopause is a real transition, but I think it's been demonized in a way that leaves women expecting decline instead of asking better questions. When you expect decline, you stop getting curious. You stop asking whether your body is depleted. You stop asking if your nervous system is stuck in survival mode. You stop asking whether your symptoms are being blamed on age and hormones when there is actually a much bigger story going on underneath. And what is so interesting about the research behind this conversation is that it pushes back on the idea that perimenopause automatically means years and years of chaos. The study that I'm referring to discussed a reanalysis of older menstrual cycle data, often referred to as the Treelor data, It's this rare data set because it included roughly 250,000 cycles from about 2,700 women, much of which was collected before hormonal birth control became widespread, which really gave the researchers a useful window into natural cycle variation across the reproductive years. And what the later reanalysis found is so important. Longer cycles did occur through perimenopause, but the biggest increase in the mean cycle length did not happen as early as many people had assumed. The largest increase showed up in the final year before menopause. In that last year, the majority of women spent at least 75% of their time in cycles longer than 40 days. And that matters because the message most women have absorbed is that once perimenopause begins, all bets are off. Everything gets irregular, everything gets worse, everything is hormonal chaos. But the research paints a more nuanced picture. There is a transition, and there are patterns, and there is timing. And I think women deserve to know that. Because when you don't understand that, you either panic over every change or you dismiss everything and just assume that it's normal. Neither one of those is helpful. And this is why I care so much about body literacy. Because your cycle is information. Your timing is information. Your bleeding is information. Your ovulation patterns are information. Even changes in regularity are information. The Stages of Reproductive Aging Workshop framework also describes the early menopausal transition as increased variability in menstrual cycle length, defined as a persistent difference of 7 days or more between consecutive cycles. So yes, change can happen. But change does not mean that your body has become random or irrelevant. And just because something may be common in perimenopause does not mean it is optimal. And just because something is happening in perimenopause does not mean that hormones are the only reason. And that is where I think so many women are being failed. Because a lot of women are walking around in a body that is stuck in stress, stuck in inflammation, depletion, poor sleep, stuck in a pace of life that looks normal from the outside, but is costing them deeply. And when a body is stuck like that, it doesn't communicate clearly, it doesn't regulate easily, and it does not heal quickly. So yes, hormones may shift in midlife, of course they do. But if the nervous system is overwhelmed, if the body is inflamed, if mineral status is poor, if blood sugar is all over the place, sleep is broken, if the body has been living in survival mode for years, then simply labeling the problem as hormonal may miss the deeper issue altogether. And that is why some women try the thing that they were told would fix everything and still not feel well, because the conversation was too narrow. And again, I want to be careful here because I'm not saying that no woman needs hormone support, but I'm saying that throwing hormones at a stressed, depleted, dysregulated body without looking at the full picture is not the same thing as getting to the root. Women deserve more than this is just your age. They deserve more than this is just part of being a woman, or your labs are normal, or just take this. They deserve context. Mainstream guidance agrees that menstrual changes are common during perimenopause, while also cautioning that worsening bleeding or irregular bleeding outside of a period should be discussed with the clinician because not every change should be brushed off as normal transition. And that's an important distinction because some change is expected, but not every change should be ignored. And if you've been told that your body is just a hormonal mess now, I kind of want to challenge that because maybe your body's not failing. Maybe your body has been carrying too much for too long. And maybe what looks like just perimenopause is also the body waving a white flag. Maybe your cycle changes are real, but the reason they feel so intense is because your system has very little resilience left. Maybe the issue is not just that your hormones are changing. Maybe the issue is that your body is exhausted, inflamed, undernourished, poorly rested. and just trying to keep up with the pace that it was never meant to sustain. It's a different conversation, and it's a much better one because that conversation gives you somewhere to go. It gives you something to pay attention to. It gives you better questions to ask. It gives you a reason to stop accepting dysfunction as normal just because it's common. And before I end here, I do want to touch briefly on one more important piece. In my practice, there's a lot of women who are in this season that are very interested in supportive tools that just help the body recover better than just simply forcing symptoms to quiet. And that's one reason I personally find the science behind GHK-Cu interesting. GHK-Cu is a naturally occurring copper peptide that has been studied for tissue remodeling, wound healing, collagen production, antioxidant activity, and anti-inflammatory effects. And what makes GHK-Cu so fascinating is that it was discovered by Dr. Lauren Picard more than 50 years ago, not as some trendy wellness ingredient, which it has become now, but as a naturally occurring human peptide found in plasma. In 1973, he identified GHK while studying why younger tissues seem to function differently than older tissue, and that discovery opened the door to decades of research on repair, regeneration, collagen production, antioxidant activity, and inflammation. If you like to geek out on information like I do, go Google GHK-Cu and you will see pages and pages and pages of studies. But why does that matter for perimenopause? Because for so many women, the issue is not just changing hormones. It's that the body has been under stress for so long that recovery is poor, inflammation is high, resilience is low, and everything just feels harder than it used to. GHK-Cu has been studied for its role in tissue remodeling and protective anti-inflammatory activity, which makes it interesting in the larger conversation of how to support a body that feels stuck rather than just simply suppressing symptoms. And I think that is the key. Women in this season often do not just need symptom management, they need support for repair. So for me, this comes back to the bigger point. And resilience is built through the full picture: how you sleep, how you recover, how inflamed you are, what your cycle is telling you, how much stress your body has been carrying, what your labs are showing beyond just the surface. And that may be the biggest takeaway from all of this. Perimenopause, yes, it's real. Yes, hormone shifts are real and cycle changes are real. But the body does not exist in a vacuum. So if stress has become your norm, if your body has been in survival mode for years, if the signs of depletion have been piling up and no one has really connected the dots, then what you are experiencing may not be the full truth of perimenopause. It may be perimenopause layered on top of a body that's already overwhelmed. And that matters because it changes how you respond. Instead of just assuming that your body is broken or this is your new norm, you start asking, what has my body been carrying? Instead of assuming that the only answer is to replace hormones, you start asking, what has been draining resilience? And instead of writing off your symptoms, you start paying attention to the bigger picture. And that is where real clarity begins. So if this episode gave you an aha moment, here's a few things I want you to sit with. First is this: just because something is common does not mean it's optimal. And the second, saying I'm not stressed does not always mean that your body agrees. For women, stress is not just a feeling of panic. It's poor sleep, inflammation, stubborn weight, cycle changes, feeling wired and tired, and a body that no longer feels resilient. The third is this: hormones matter, but hormones aren't the whole story. And the fourth, your cycle still tells a story in perimenopause. Even in transition, there are patterns. So a few things to try. Start paying attention to what your body has been normalizing: your sleep, your energy, cycle timing, bleeding patterns, stress tolerance, recovery. and ask better questions. Not just what hormone am I missing, but what is my body trying to tell me? And then zoom out. Because often what looks like hormone issue is actually a whole body issue. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's me. I have felt this for a long time. I've normalized stress. I've been told my labs are normal, or I feel like I'm just getting partial answers, but not the full picture. That's exactly why I created the Rooted Reset. I can't tell you how many women, at least daily, I talk to that were given hormone replacement therapy for one set of hormones without the doctor or practitioner actually realizing that all the hormones work in like a symphony with one another. And so if you affect one thing, you add in a bunch of extra testosterone, for example, and you're not accounting for the way that that impacts the others, it's all a mess. Like, I have had so many women that have grown beards and taken more testosterone than a man should be taken, and they're totally messed up. And that's just not right, in my opinion. So inside the Rooted Reset, we really step back and look at the full picture so you can understand what your body is trying to communicate, what may have been missed along the way, because I guarantee you something was missed. So if you're tired of being told this is just your age or just your hormones or just something you have to live with, you can learn more about working with me through the Rooted Reset at susangladstein.com. Thanks for listening to Faith Over Pharma. If this helped cut through the noise, share it with a friend who always asks, do you think this actually works? And if you're ready to go deeper through immersive retreats, phototherapy, or the Rooted Reset, you'll find your next steps at susangladstein.com.
Thanks for listening.